Matt Kona, thanks for coming on the show, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Ed. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's been a long time since you and I have got a chance to catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember if you maybe you can help me out. The last time our
Maine
paths crossed.
Was it Maine? Maybe we did that show up in Maine,
Oh yeah, could have
right?
been.
It was
Yeah.
me. I want to say it was me, you, Al Park, and Steve McCone, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes. Yeah. That
Yeah,
was great fun.
that was a long time. That had to be like 7 or 8, maybe even like 8 years ago, 9 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when's the last time that you did stand up before everything took place with the
So
lockdown?
so the last time I did stand up, it was the first third, or excuse me, it was the first Thursday of March, whenever
Really?
that was. I think it was March 3rd. I only remember because it was at the Naked Comedy Show in Improv Boston, and that's always the first Thursday of the month. And I'm always on that show. That's like my one stable comedy booking. I always have that for the month. And so yeah, the last time I was on stage, I was shaking my privates and my behind.
I've never done that show.
You should do it.
So wait, what is it? Well, I haven't done stand up in like 5 years, but
Even better,
wait,
because
what is that? Wait, tell me what is that experience like the first time?
the first time I did it, I was a bit nervous, and I don't get nervous doing comedy all the time because probably the first time I did it, I had been doing stand up for about 5 years or so, but all fully clothed. And so I asked to be on the show, and because it starts later, it starts at 9:30 at night.
No, did Matt just freeze up on us?
Hey,
Matt,
I was
oh,
able
there you
to
go.
grandma's basement, rest in peace, and I went to the hideout in Faneuil Hall, and I had a couple whiskeys, and I don't often do that, but I had a couple whiskeys just because I felt like I would be more nervous, so this would calm me down, and I was more nervous about keeping it to 5 minutes
Okay.
because for the first timers, they usually just keep a strict time schedule around you, but it was fun. I mean, honestly, Andy O'Feish, who created the show, he goes out there and he opens up every month. He does about 15 minutes that includes him doing a handstand and yoga poses and all sorts of great, strange things. So the audience is pretty desensitized to naked people on stage. So if you're just standing there telling jokes, it's just like any other show, except I think I might have got an involuntary laugh because I shaked my body a little bit, and then something kept shaking, and I didn't account for that.
I mean, here's the thing for me. I feel like, well, doing stand-up comedy in general, you're very vulnerable when you're up there, right? I mean, you got the lights on you, and now you're taking it to this, higher level where now you're naked.
Oh yeah. And I also had plenty of jokes about how I dress. I used to do a lot of material about looking like a homeless person. I know everyone watching this now is like, no way, that's not possible. But yeah, no. But I had the beard was about like a foot longer back then too,
Right.
and I had long hair, and I always had like a flannel that was on fire or ripped or shredded or something. So I couldn't really comment on my outfit when my outfit is 6 feet away from me behind a curtain. So it did take some small adjustments, no pun intended. But
now, what is that crowd like? So I believe the show is a midnight show.
No, it's 9:30 on a Thursday.
Okay.
9:30 on a Thursday. So it's sort of a reasonable time, usually done by 11:15. The crowd is usually phenomenal. That's why I said even if you've been on break from stand up for 5 years, they're very generous. Like that's part of the reason that comics keep coming back to it. I mean, a lot of people like to do it for the first time. Some people just to say that they've done it. But comics love it because they can try out a new bit in front of a real crowd and sort of gauge the reaction. Where if you have like a little routine that you're working on, you try it out at an open mic, you're just getting death stares from 15 other people who are waiting to go do their shit. So what are you gonna do? So it's great for that.
So it's an actual live audience.
Yeah, and they're fully clothed. That's another question that we get a lot. Are you allowed to be naked in the crowd? And you are not. That would be strange if you're sitting next to a person, you're naked, I think. But they did a version of it in New York. In New York, you could be naked in the crowd, which I think caused some discomfort. Yeah.
So what is the atmosphere like backstage? Are all the comics naked? I mean, I'm sure people. I'm actually curious about that.
So not really, but Andy usually stays naked for the entire show because he's hosting it. So he's just not going to just keep getting dressed and everything. I mean, if he has to go to the bar, he'll throw something on. I should get him a robe. That would be good if he just had a robe. But he gets dressed to go to get a beer or has someone get it for him. But so usually you just get naked right before you go on. But it's funny because I've done the show so long. And when someone is doing it for the first time, they're usually going first or second. So sometimes like Andy will just take the stage and say they're going first. Then they'll go backstage and then just take their clothes off. And I'm like, he's going to do like 20 minutes. You don't have to just stand here nakedly listening to him and psyching yourself out. But not usually. People aren't normally naked backstage. But I hosted it one time. Andy went on vacation, and I specifically booked a lot of my friends who have never done it before.
Right.
And I made the decision to stay naked backstage the whole time just to make them more uncomfortable, I think. So I had some fun with it.
That's incredible. I mean, that's going to be that's like a really that's a test right there if you can get up there in front of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly it's very fast. People are often asking me about it, and Andy gets asked about it for so much. He's been doing it for about 10 years. So he had the idea of starting a podcast that happens during the show. So we interview someone before they go on stage for the first time and kind of talk about what they're nervous about or why they decided to do it. And then they do their set, and then they come back and we talk some more. And then just all the comics who were on just come in and out. So it's sort of it's a really fun podcast. It's called Backstage at the Naked Comedy Showcase, and I've put out a best of episode this month because we had no shows the last two first Thursdays, and it was a lot of fun listening back to some of the old conversations. So there's usually a pretty good crew of comics that do it, and you get guests drop in from New York. I mean, Mike Kaplan has done it a few times.
Really?
Yeah, and he's got Netflix specials, and he's prolific comedian.
Yeah, absolutely. See, I feel like I'd have to make it a point to work out.
Some people have done that. I've asked people if they want to do the show, and they're like, not this month. Let me hit the gym a little harder, and maybe I'll come back. Or if it's the summertime, you see a lot of tan lines. So some people get into that. I mean, I don't care. I mean, I do like to exercise and things like that, but I would go out there regardless. I remember one time I had a mole removed from near crotch area, and so I had to shave half of my pubes. Yes, the drapes matched the rug, and I just didn't even think to mention it. And people were asking me after the show, why is half your bush shaved? And I was like, oh, I had a mole removed. And they're like, why did you talk about it? I forgot. I don't know. I want to work on my jokes, not just point out my nether regions.
Now, how long have you been doing that show for?
I mean, it's been going on for about over 10 years now, maybe 12 years. Really? But okay. I've only been a part of it the last 6 years.
Now, how long have you been in the comedy scene for?
Well, I started doing comedy in August of 2009. So I've been doing it for a little over 10 years. These last couple of years, I have sort of taken my foot off the pedal for various reasons, burnout. Also, I got a day job as a tour guide. So I do tours 5 90-minute tours a day. So, and I tell jokes on those, and people give me cash right afterwards. So it beats waiting 4 hours at a bar for no cash to do 7 minutes or something. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I honestly, I don't know. I still love comedy and writing jokes. It's also just laziness and not wanting to make the effort to go out as much. But comedy is still very near and dear to me, and I'm always making jokes and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well,
Yeah.
the tough part about Boston, and I've been telling everyone this, is that it's a really tough place to do comedy, in my opinion, because you don't have comedy clubs lined up on the main roads like you do like New York City, right? So you're going, and I noticed when I was doing it that I felt like every time I go to a mic, there would be 10 more people than the last time I was there.
Yes, and people move, like people grow out of Boston, whether they're here just for college or they want to move to, pursue their careers. I mean, a lot of people that I started out with have had success, and that's great. I'm like in awe of some of the cool things that have happened, and glad to be a part of it. But or have been a part of their start. I never really pushed myself to try to make that move. I don't know, but it's also tough because of that, and there's so many new people. You're like constantly restarting. I could go to a mic now and only know 2 or 3 people there, and
right.
I mean that's kind of good. Like they don't know my stuff, so I could just do these old jokes from 2012 that kill, instead of having to write new things. But it's also like harder to get booked on shows if people don't know who you are. And I stopped. That was one thing that annoyed me, having to bug people to get on shows and messages and asking people for stuff. I'm just like, I'm funny. They'll ask me, and then either they don't know me or they're not booking shows. And the shows that you do get booked, half the times they'll get canceled, or they're for like 3 people in the audience at this bar deep in Somerville, off the beaten path, like you said. So, well, what are you gonna do? Naked show. That's my sweet spot, because it's always good, and it's in a club.
What do you think the scene's gonna be like when we're back to whatever normal looks like?
That's gonna be that's a big question, because comedy is best when it's in a small enclosed area, preferably with a low ceiling, where people are packed in tight. And for health reasons, it's pretty obvious that those are not good conditions for people who want to rush back into. I know things are getting opened up in some places soon, or they're doing a gradual rolling out of things. I mean, you could still have comedy with reduced capacity. It just won't have really like the same vibe to it. I don't know, but I mean, I hope that it returns. People need to be entertained, and businesses deserve to survive. But I think that the bar scene is going to be tough. There's so many bar shows in Boston, and they're just not going to make money if they're only allowing 15 people max for a comedy club, when you could be selling much more drinks just having a DJ night or trivia or something at a bar, or just be a bar.
Now, have you ever done an outdoor show before?
Yeah, I have done outdoor shows, and that's the first thing, because I've got friends from all over the US on Facebook, and some of the earlier, this is like weeks ago, someone who I know in Florida was doing a drive-in show. So how it works is they're using the lot behind this restaurant that's pretty big, that had comedy, and they put a stage with a screen, and they'll have the comic on the stage, but they're also going to be videotaping them and putting that on the screen, and then loudspeakers, and people can turn the radio to listen to it. So that seems cool. It's pretty not feasible in Boston. I mean, there's a drive-in in Mendon. I don't know how that would work, but yeah, I mean, outdoor, open air, those are definitely the safest environments. It's tough. I've done plenty of outdoor shows, and they've all been tough in certain ways, because even if they're all there to see you, like I've done Porch Fest in Somerville, it's still like you get the laughs and then they disappear. It's hard to have that condensed sounds
right.
to feed off of. You know, you might be getting more smiles or whatever. I think people are just going to be happy to be performing. They're not going to be worried about bombing
That's true.
outdoors. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean that is true. I have a hard time consuming comedy from my house.
Yeah.
Like all the Netflix specials. You know, I want to be with people that are also laughing.
Yeah,
You know?
and I love the stuff that happens in between the jokes, real reactions and things
Right.
that making fun of someone in the crowd. You can't be like, "Hey, you in the Jeep, your lights are on. Do you need the
Right.
light?" You know, it's going to be
Yeah.
a little bit difficult for that. I've done a couple of Zoom shows,
Oh yeah. How's
and
that going?
they're all right. They're a little bit more fun than I had skeptically thought that they would be. But one thing that's kind of weird, and on Zoom you could control whether or not your camera is on or
Yep.
your microphone is on. So a lot of people, like I did one on Friday. It was a benefit for for nurses and stuff in the New Hampshire area, put on by this venue called the Word Barn, and a lot of people were watching, but a lot of people were muted and hidden. You know, they just had an avatar up.
Right.
And I'm like, I'd like to hear, but people who weren't were great. They were laughing, so you could tell when a joke was getting a reaction and stuff like that. But I was also trying to do a little observational crowd work or making fun of their screen names and stuff like that, which was good. And that's something that I miss it, because I've also done some comedy that was just me videotaping myself and then sending it to this guy Ben Kronberg, who's been on TV a bunch of times, and he kind of curated that. He had a lot of comics from around the country, sent him videos, and he hosted the show. And it would just be a clip show, just like people could watch it, which was cool.
Oh, okay.
But it's nice to see the reactions of people, even if it's on a screen. But yeah, I don't care. I'll do comedy outside. The first time I ever did comedy outside, here's a quick little story. I was working my day job at the time, which was at an independent record label, and one of the interns, who was a little bit annoying, but he was friendly enough. He asked me, "Hey, you want to come to my barbecue this weekend?" And I'm like, "No, no thanks." And he goes, "No, you can do comedy at it." I was like, "Okay, but can I bring 2 other comics?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." And so we go to the place, and he sets up a PA and all this stuff. He's like, "There's the food, whatever. Grab yourself a beer, and you could do the comedy show whenever in 20 minutes or so. But I gotta go. I gotta work." And I was like, "Wait, what? You're leaving?" So his roommates were the ones really having the barbecue. He just lived there, and I don't even know if he asked them if we could do it. He just said that it was going to happen. So they're all having a barbecue, and then we turn the music down, and I just start telling jokes to this cookout. And yeah, it went all right. Like they were all people who were sort of around our age, and we kind of made fun of the situation. Like that's the first thing I addressed. I'm like, well, Bobby asked us to do this, and then he immediately left. So here we are. I don't know when we have to end, but here we go. But it's in Somerville, so you got houses all lined up next to each other, real close quarters. And there was a lull, or I might have said some sort of a dirty or an R-rated type of joke, and I hear a voice from 1 yard over, and it's this lady who's with her probably like 6-year-old kid. She's like, "It's my son's birthday." And I was like, wow, that's is that a heckle? Do you want me to give him a shout out? I think she was trying to tell us to stop, but we kept at it.
That is tough to do something like that in front of people that aren't expecting it.
Yeah, always.
Right?
Yeah.
When I did that wrestling event last week, where I was, where I had a couple interviews, we had on Oscar from Men on a Mission. Do you remember Men on a Mission?
Oh, I do, dude.
Okay.
First of all, here's a little side note. Men on the Mission. I love trivia. I love wrestling, and I love the Boston Garden, the old venue.
Oh yeah.
The first thing I ever saw there was WWF, and it was Undertaker versus Ultimate Warrior in a body bag match.
Whoa.
It was great. But so they had wrestling there for years. That was the last major event that happened at the Garden. Was a WWF house show before they tore it down. And they've only done one pay-per-view from the Boston Garden, and it was Survivor Series. I want to say like 93, but it was when the Men on a Mission dressed up like the Doinks. It was like the 4 Doinks. It was them and the Bushwhackers against Ludwig Borga and the all the non-Americans or something, the Quebecers and someone else. But yeah, that's my Men on the Mission connection. Well, but yeah, I love Oscar. He would rap them out.
Yes. Well, he was saying, which, I mean, this is like unbelievable to think about, because he was saying that he wanted to be a rapper so bad that he would literally, if he saw any celebrity, he'd go up to them and just start rapping, right? Yeah. Now, just imagine trying to go up to, you see Jerry Seinfeld and you go up to him and tell him a joke. So he said that he was at a casino in Vegas and he saw Randy Savage.
Wow.
And he went out, he was trying to get up to get close to him.
Fellow rapper Randy Savage.
Right, yeah. Be a man, Hogan. And he said Vince McMahon was standing next to him, so Oscar went up to him and he started freestyling. And next thing you know, he's in the WWF.
Wow.
Like, it takes a lot of balls to do that, in my opinion. Just to go up to random people and try to show them your art when they, you have to capture their attention in like 30 seconds, like maybe even less.
Yeah.
So that reminds me of trying to do a stand up at a cookout where people aren't,
Oh, I mean, at least at a cookout, you have a crowd. But if I went up to someone who I really admired that was, a fan, a comedy idol of mine or something, and I just, started telling them jokes, it's so different. Like, I mean, you must have known it. Like when people that were friends of yours or family members found out that you were doing comedy, they ever like, all right, tell me a joke.
Right.
And you're like, no, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way.
It's so much different.
That's actually kind of funny, right? Because it doesn't work. Like, how does it work? Like, if I was someone who didn't know count, I'd be like, I don't understand. Like, isn't your job? How does it not work that way? And I would think that's actually the way it does work.
Yeah.
Is you just tell jokes.
I know. Yeah. I mean, it's like going up to Eddie Van Halen. Do a guitar solo for me.
Right.
Right now. I want to stand here and observe it.
Who were some of the people that you looked up to, that made you think about getting into comedy?
Well, let me just I'll answer that in kind of a roundabout way, because this is similar to what happened with Oscar, because, and I have a Macho Man Randy Savage story too. But
I want to hear it.
All right, well, I'll start with that one because it's pretty easy. So what really drove me to love comedy first was, like, my biggest inspiration was more sketch comedy than stand up. So I wanted to do sketch comedy years ago. So around 2000, I moved to Boston, actually Brookline, which is right next door. And I started doing volunteer stuff at Brookline Access Television because I wanted to get into television production and stuff like that. Side note, sad sub story. I think I was the last generation of people to learn how to edit on VHS. So I got a degree in pixie dust, nothing but whatever. But we would do all these things at the Brookline Access Television, and then Comcast came to town and they bought like half the building. It was kind of a hostile takeover of the BAT studio. So they took away the big studio that we used to film in, and they started putting out their CN8 programming. They had a sports show that would go live every night at 11. And that's also at the same time that we had, me and my friend Bill Davidson, we did a live call-in show, but we would just do like these weird sketches and characters. And it was around Halloween, and I had bought or acquired somehow just like this rubber, this red bald cap, but it was kind of like what downhill skiers or power skaters in the Olympics. It just covered everything except my face in red spandex. And so I also bought a red turtleneck and red pants, and I painted my face red, and I said that my Halloween costume was a dog's dick. Real big time laughs, real mature. A lot of effort for just one little joke in a cable show. And so afterwards, I'm washing the face paint off my face in the bathroom, which we also share with the Comcast people. And who walks through the door, like decked out in full leather? I swear, I even had like leather sunglasses. Was the Macho Man Randy Savage. And I was like,
Wow.
what is going on? This is 11 o'clock on a Monday night. I'm dressed ridiculously with makeup on, and the Macho Man just walked into the bathroom, and he gives me a weird look, and I'm like, oh hey, like everything's normal. And then he urinates next to me. Pretty good stream, as I recall. And I was just like, hey, how you doing? And then I don't know. I didn't know what to say. I have makeup and water all over my face, and I left it, and I asked someone that worked there, I'm like, what is the Macho Man doing here? And they're like, he's promoting his rap album. And I was like, whoa, that's how I first learned that he had a rap album. I had no idea. It was so off the beaten path. But I didn't tell him any jokes or explain the joke that was my costume.
My Macho Man story is that I was 8 years old, or maybe 9 years old, and and my dad took me to New Haven Coliseum in Connecticut to go buy tickets. It was like during the day, and I think there was going to be a show that night, and Macho Man was outside, and I ran back into into the car because I was like, I was afraid to see him.
Yeah. Wow. Did he have Zubas on?
I don't know. He had the the fanny pack with the jeans.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I had to run back in.
Yeah. That's crazy. All right. So now the similar to Oscar's story is, all right. So this is kind of like a weird thing. So the day that I did my very first stand-up open mic, I decided to do it because I used to be a roadie for a band, and we had just been on tour. We're driving back from Pittsburgh, and I kind of made the decision in my head I was going to start to try to do stand-up in front of a crowd, not just make my friends laugh. And so I knew that there was an open mic that night, but I also got, like, a friend told me that they were casting. There was a Boston casting call for the new Adam Sandler movie that was being filmed in Boston, and it turned out to be a movie called Grown Ups, which made millions and millions of dollars. So I went there the day we got back. Basically got no sleep. I went to Boston casting. I did an audition, and I got cast as a featured extra. So, like, not just like a person in a crowd, but someone that would be dressed up. And my role was, I was sort of like the stage director of a fashion show. Selma Hayek's character was a fashion designer in that movie. So there's a fashion show, and I'm like making sure all the models are in place. I've got a clipboard, a headset, dressed up pretty spiffy. And so I got cast that day. That day was August 4th. But they didn't film the movie until maybe a month or two later or something. And by the time they had filmed it, I had been doing comedy for about a month. But I loved it, and I was compulsively recording my sets on a cassette Walkman with headphones as a microphone. And I would always record my sets. And I had my roommate who was an audio engineer my buddy that I went to college with. And so I had him take all my sets and put them onto a CD. And the day of the filming, I had the CD with me at Grown Ups at the set. I thought, if I see Adam Sandler or someone, I could tell them I'm a stand-up comic and give them my CD. Now, keep in mind, the first month of a person's comedy career is 99% garbage, the worst jokes. It's like the bottom of the barrel, stuff like that. And mine was no exception. In fact, there was even a set of me doing a roast of a bunch of my friends' punk bands. And so I wrote like a cheat sheet explaining why the jokes were funny. I'm like, well, this guy dresses like this, so that's why I said this. And I put it, I know, I'm an insane person. And so I have this CD with me all day. I did meet Adam Sandler. I did not want to give it to him, though. But he's like, he looked at me because it was kind of a ridiculous person. He's like, what's up, buddy? And he says that to everyone. Very nice guy. But someone that who I had seen, one of the rare people who I had seen do stand-up before I started doing it, was the opener to Adam Sandler's tour. So Adam Sandler did a couple albums. One of them was called What the Hell Happened to Me? And he did this big stadium tours, mostly music, but he had an opener who was the caddy from Happy Gilmore, this guy, Alan Covert. He works for Happy Madison. He's co-written a bunch of the movies. He's always producing them. And so we were at catering outside, and I was talking to him. He's super affable. And I gave him this CD, and I never heard anything. Thank God. I really hope he never even listened to it. I follow him on Twitter and Instagram, and I know he has time in his hands now, so I'm thinking about asking him. But it's some pretty rough stuff on that CD if he did listen to it. But I took my shot. I didn't try to tell him it's a person,
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So who else was on that set? Did you get a chance to meet anyone else, or?
No, so for that day, there were no other stars. It was pretty much just Adam and Salma Hayek. I mean, not that she's not a huge star, but no, Chris Rock, Dave Spade, and Colin Quinn, and those guys weren't in that scene. But so I will cut to when the movie came out in theaters. I went to see it at midnight on the Thursday night before it came out because I was excited. I brought my buddy. We were at Grandma's basement, which was inside the Hong Kong Cafe behind Fenway Park, right down the street from there's a cinema there. So we're drinking, doing the comedy night. I bought my tickets in advance. We go down there, and I probably passed out or fell asleep within 10 minutes because I had been drinking a little bit too much. And so I woke up and the credits were on. And I was like, God damn. So I didn't want to buy a ticket to go see it again. So I'm like, I'll just wait until it's on video or something. And I pre-ordered the DVD, and I got it the day it came out. I went home, I watched it. My scene is not in the movie. I thought maybe it's a deleted scene. There's no deleted scenes on the DVD, so I was like, oh well, I guess that happens. And then about a month later, I get a call from a buddy going, "Hey, I just saw you in a deleted scene from Grown Ups." I was like, "What? How did you get a?" He goes, "Oh, I got the Blu-ray. They got deleted scenes on the Blu-ray." So I didn't buy a Blu-ray player, but my buddy had an extra one, and he gave it to me. And I bought the Blu-ray of it, and you could sort of see me in the foreground. I'm a little blurry, but if you get the Blu-ray of Grown Ups, I'm in a deleted scene. So I got my first film credit and my first stand-up set done in the same day.
What is the difference between an extra and a featured extra?
Well, an extra could be just a bunch of people in the crowd. So people who are just sitting at a table in the fashion show. A featured extra is sort of like right behind the, Salma Hayek, or kind of, she was the fashion designer in the movie, and I was the backstage person. Like I didn't have any lines, but I was sort of kind of satelliting her in there. It just means that you're a little bit more present. You're not just a guy in a concert crowd. You might be the hot dog vendor at a concert crowd.
Somebody wants to know if you dated Hilary Duff.
No, but I have gotten that question before. I feel like it because there's someone else named Matt Kona, or I just look like her type. I think it's one of those things, but that's a throwback. I haven't been asked the Hilary Duff question in a while. I was a little bit old for her work on Nickelodeon or whatever, but she's a nice lady now. She's an adult, so I'm in the clear.
Can I ask how long were you on set for? I'm always fascinated because I was an extra in a movie, and I was telling somebody it was like 14 hours on set in the freezing cold to get paid $80. And it was like the worst experience of my life.
What movie was that?
It was The Siege with Bruce Willis and Denzel Washington.
Oh wow!
I actually stole the props that they gave me.
Yeah,
I took them. I still have them. It was like some plastic blanket when I was in the cage, the prison or whatever. But it was a terrible experience.
Oh, I had something too. I had the lanyard, the backstage lanyard. I don't know where it is because I had a bunch of comedy festival lanyards too, and I think they all got water damage when my basement flooded. But yeah, I forgot all about that. It was a long day. I think we got there at 8 a.m. and probably wrapped around 7 p.m. But it was the summertime. It was indoors, so it wasn't bad. It was a little bit toasty, but it was also a fashion show, so I was surrounded by fashion models. So that that and Selma Hayek and Adam Sandler. So I couldn't be happier. I got free food, whatever. I don't care.
How long do they come out for to film their scene? Like 10 minutes?
Yeah,
Right.
maybe around there. I mean, they do a lot of takes on the Adam Sandler movies because they're always throwing out alternate jokes and stuff. So a little bit longer. Salma Hayek likes a very complicated Starbucks drink. I saw her ordering it, and I was like, "How do you remember all that stuff?" But but yeah, I did another extra thing later that summer for another Adam Sandler production for a movie called Zookeeper, and this scene was also a fashion show. I was not a featured extra in this. I was in the crowd. I was way I can't be seen. I know, like while we were filming, I was like, the camera is way over there. I'm just taking up space. And that was an overnight shoot, which was brutal.
Really?
It went from 5 p.m. until like 7 a.m.
Wow.
So I did not enjoy myself as much on that shoot. So
yeah, it's funny how they rope you into that. At least for me, I think I was 21. Visions of grandeur, thinking that if you get on the set, maybe somebody will someone will like discover you.
Yeah, maybe you have a look. Maybe you throw out a line, and then you have to like legally join the Screen Actors Guild, and they pay you more. Yeah, that's every extra's dream, I think.
I don't know if that actually happened. I want to find someone if that's ever happened to them.
I think it has. I think that's a thing, and it's funny because that happens with like television actors. If you ever watched like a Star Trek episode, there's always like the main cast, but then there's random other people that never talk. It's because if they talk, they have to be paid a royalty every time that it airs. So you'll see that, like, all right, go do this. Head nods, not
like Billy Zane in Back to the Future.
Oh, I didn't even know about that.
Right, and then he went on to do Titanic, but he was. Yeah. I think he's considered an extra in Back to the Future.
Yeah. What was he? What scene was
he was part of Biff's crew.
Oh wow! Yeah,
he's in like the background with the sunglasses on.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah,
it's crazy the way that works. But I haven't been an extra since, so I had
good for
Hollywood stars in my eyes.
Now you were like the original. You were the first person I ever talked to that did a podcast.
Yeah, I really
you were doing one in like your. I think it was in your car that you were doing, right?
I would do them anywhere. I had different variations of setup. The podcast is not active. I feel like I should bring it back for this quarantine or something, because the reason I stopped doing it was because I wanted to focus more on doing stand-up, because I loved doing it, but sometimes I was getting booked more often. I would have to refuse dates so I could hang out with someone and podcast, and sometimes if they flaked out, then I lost the gig and can't even do a show. But it's called Comics Coming Up. It's still on Apple Podcast and on mattkona.com. But yeah, I would record it on an iPad sometimes, or any means necessary. We had a nice microphone set up. My buddy Tom Howell produced it for a while, but he was also traveling an hour to come in to Boston to record it. And then we made it a live podcast at Grandma's basement. But yeah, it was like the first Boston comedy podcast, at least, and now there's a ton of them, which is cool.
There's like 10 million of them.
Oh,
which is
I know.
Which is cool. I mean,
yeah,
obviously, yeah. I mean, I wish I was earlier to the party, but I'm late to it. But who knows what's going to happen? But what I thought was funny was when I saw Jerry Seinfeld's comedian in cars getting coffee, I immediately thought of you, because I'm like, I remember Matt Kona driving around doing the podcast in his car.
Oh yeah.
So maybe you were like the first one to do that.
Yeah,
you had the. So which ones do you have now? Because don't you have like 3 shows that you do?
So I have the Backstage at the Naked Comedy Showcase, which is a monthly podcast, which is kind of weird, because usually some podcasts come out multiple times a week. We stick to once a month, less commitment. And I had I do a podcast about a very obscure Marvel comic book character called Quasar, called the Quantum Zone, with two guys from Pittsburgh and Arkansas who I've never met in real life, but
Okay.
they're like super knowledgeable comic people, and I'm kind of the comic relief. You know, I'm always just making jokes about that, but we just take an issue and basically read it. It's sort of like an audiobook crossed with director's commentary of a DVD with a little bit of Mystery Science Theater sprinkled in. And I did an MMA podcast with my buddy Nick David called MMA Maniacs, which was great. But the thing with that is, if you're doing whatever subject it is, if you're doing something that is with current events, you have to put it out constantly. And so, you know, both of us had pretty busy lives. So sometimes we wouldn't get it up in time for the fight. And who wants to listen to a preview of a fight that happened 3 days before? You know.
Well, you're a big MMA fan, right? I see a lot of stuff that you put.
Oh yeah.
So, all right, here's something that I thought of, because I'm not into the MMA. I can't get into it, but I'm a huge wrestling fan, at least like, you know, from the 80s and 90s, right? I'm not really that much anymore.
Yeah.
But I wonder if UFC could somehow craft storylines that would make the fights more, you know, more mainstream, where I'm like, oh man, this guy cheated on, you know, this guy slept with this dude's girlfriend. Like, they're gonna fight tomorrow night. Like, I feel like I would buy that.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I mean, I was I'm in the same sort of boat as you. I was a huge 80s and 90s wrestling fan. I kind of fell in and out of it. I had friends and so many people in comedy who like wrestling. So I would go over to a buddy's house to watch the pay-per-view. Actually, you know what? I remember they invited me to go to the Royal Rumble. It was when there was a 40-man Royal Rumble. It was in Boston, the one that Alberto Del Rio won. And I had a great time. I didn't know who half these new wrestlers were, but I had a good time. And I started following it. And I didn't follow UFC that much. Like, I had a buddy of mine who I'd been like on tour with. He was in a band in Baltimore, and we're staying at his house. I was down there to do a comedy show, and it was the night that Ronda Rousey fought for the very first time in the UFC. Right. It was the first time that it had women. So that like, her story kind of drew me in terms of interest first. But what really got me kind of to become a real fan was when I found out that Conor McGregor had sold out the TD Garden the same night of a Patriots playoff game in January. And I was like, who is this guy? And so I started watching. UFC does these cool things on YouTube called Embedded, which is like a little mini documentary that follows both of the fighters. So that's how I learned about him. And he's a real charismatic kind of trash talker, which is similar to the world of professional wrestling. But then you see him really violently hurting people. And so I kind of I keep a fan of him, and then more into like the technical aspects of it. But there are real beefs. There are, beefs that get exploited in ways like McGregor throwing a dolly through a van window and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, McGregor's obviously a star, but the one problem, well, I'll tell you what, there was a night, I think Ronda Rousey fought like a New Year's Eve night, maybe. I think it might have been.
When she got knocked out against the
right.
Nunes.
Yeah. Was it New Year's Eve? Okay, because
it was the day before New Year's Eve. Yeah.
It was so it was it was my anniversary. So my wife and I were like out to dinner in New York City, and I'm like, we gotta get back because I want to watch the fight, you know. And that's when I was like, oh wow, this is really, MMA, UFC might actually be something I might be interested in. But then Ronda Rousey loses, right? And that's one of the advantages that WWE has, is they can keep their stars up on top for however long they want to, where UFC has a hard time building someone up because they're gonna lose, right? You have to find somebody who could. Like, I don't know if you remember Hoist Gracie when like it all first started. That guy just wouldn't lose.
Yeah.
Right. And that was cool because they're like, oh man, I wonder who can beat him. But like, I feel like now the guys kind of just beat each other.
Yeah, but there is something to be said for. I mean, there are a lot of fighters who are undefeated. There was maybe one or two on like they just brought back the UFC this past Saturday. But I mean, the woman who beat Ronda Rousey, Amanda Nunes, she was pretty under the radar then. but now she's like a big star. So I do agree with you. The UFC has to do a bit of a better job marketing their stars. But if you check out some of those embeddeds, you get a good sense of like their personality. Like it might not always be about feuding, but there's like real life beefs and real smack talk back and forth between people. That's pretty interesting. And I got sucked into.
What was the reality show that Daniel Pewter was in?
Oh, The Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I watched. Yeah, see that was I watched every. I think I watched almost every episode of that. That was cool. I like that.
Yeah. And there's like 20 seasons of that. That's good because you get to see. I mean, that's like a strange situation. Like these guys are fighting each other, but they're also like, yo, don't use all the milk. You know.
Right, and then they have to live together.
Yeah.
You know, and I do wonder. There's a kind of a parallel there between like wrestling. Every comedian I know likes wrestling. UFC, and there's always like something nerdy that they're into as well. Like me, like behind me, I'm a huge toy collector. Mm-hmm. I love collecting toys from the 80s.
Yeah,
that's like my thing, right? I mean, I think you were doing a show once where you were asking for anyone who's like a collector.
Yes, because I did all sorts of. I mean, I have a massive collection of random things too. I had a bunch of toys because I worked at KB Toys in the early.
No, really?
I worked there in the early 2000s. So.
Oh man, that's like my dream.
It was awesome. I bought so many Simpsons toys. I have like Tom. You know, I would get toys just because I was like, "But this is cool," and who knows. And I have a Tom Brady rookie Todd McFarlane toy.
Oh yeah, yep.
Probably yellowed with age by now, but
that's so funny. You know what's funny about that is like the ones behind. If they're still in the package, obviously they're worth a lot of money, right? Mm. I'll pay more for the ones that have a price tag on them, where it'll say like KB Toys or Toys R Us, just so I could like be, oh wow, this is really like someone went in there and paid $4.99 for this, and now it's worth, whatever it's worth now. But
yeah,
I'm definitely into that stuff.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's a kind of a cool little nuance.
Now, do you collect comic books, or you just do that podcast?
Yeah, so I have quite a bit of comic books, but I don't collect them to sort of resale value or looking for expensive ones. I just love digging through the dollar bins and 50-cent bins, and I get a lot of 90s comics because I read them back then, but I couldn't get everything, so I sort of gravitated towards stuff that I remember seeing but never read. Like I never read Quasar when I was a kid, but it was in the Avengers and he was always sort of around. But when I read it, it's like it stuck out to me because he's not like a traditional superhero. He's a guy that kind of doubts himself constantly. He feels like a fraud. He's been anointed into this position as protector of the universe, and but he's really just a humble dude stumbling through life, and it's kind of like well written and funny in some ways. So, but yeah, I have a whole bunch of comic books. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of space to keep them. So that's, I mean, they're thin, but you spend enough time in those dollar bins and they expand. So
yeah, no, absolutely.
I read comics digitally, so which is cool.
Really?
I mean, it's not something that I do that often, but if I want, it's kind of neat to be like, oh yeah, I wonder if that Hulk versus the Thing issue, if I can look that up and read that instead of, especially now with all the stores closed. But I do love collection. You know, like I collected all the Guardians of the Galaxy comics from the 90s.
Oh yeah,
the Quasar. Okay. It's nice to have.
Are you into the movies as well?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I like the movies a lot. I think I've seen pretty much every of the Marvel MCU or whatever as they call it. Yeah, I think I've seen all those. I haven't seen like the new X-Men or every single Netflix show or anything. I think I just saw Punisher and Daredevil. But I mean, they're doing it. They got a billion-dollar industry out of it. So they're doing.
Well, I'll tell you what. The one that I really want them to make, which they'll probably never make, is the Wonder Twins.
Oh yes.
You remember them?
Is that the Power Pack? Is it like
I'm not
little
sure.
girl and little boy?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
with the monkey, right?
yeah. Okay.
And they could
Yeah,
turn into whatever they want to turn into. It was from the
yeah.
just I think it was Justice League.
Hmm. Okay, yeah.
So I'm not sure. Is that Marvel or is that? I think that might be DC.
League is DC. No, I was confusing with Power Pack, which is also like a brother sister young kid duo that was pretty interesting. But yeah, I know what you mean. DC has done some all right movies, but their stuff's a little bit. I mean, it's sort of like the comic books. They're not as all in the same world. You know, they need to. They're not as connected, rather.
What do
As
you mean
Marvel.
by that?
I mean, there's there's like there's the Harley Quinn movie, there's the Joker movie, and you're never going to see those two characters
Oh,
interact in a
okay.
movie. But like they're kind of both from the Batman comic book world,
Yep.
and they could unite in comic books. But I mean, I know they've had Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman all in the same movie, and Justice League and stuff like that. But whatever, no criticism, just
Yeah.
something.
Now, do you use any of that stuff when you're writing your jokes at all? Like, do you just look at like random stuff and try to find a joke there, like some of the other people do, or what do you? How do you get your stuff?
Well, most of the jokes that I had that are just random things that could occur to me.
Okay.
Sometimes, yeah, if I'm reading a comic book, what I love about them is sort of like the weird old ads that they have in there for like Hulk doing an advertisement for fruit pies or something where
Yeah.
it looks like he murdered someone just to get a fruit pie. You're like that's just a man. He's definitely dead, but fruit pies. Okay, kids. I don't know. Usually the jokes I have are either based on some sort of a weird spin on a common thing. I do a lot of wordplay and stuff like that, or some bizarre story that has happened to me and sort of mashed up. But I don't know. Like I like to. I'll write jokes on a subject. Like so, I did a couple. I've performed comedy at comic book conventions, and so I sat down and specifically wrote jokes about superheroes and Star Wars and Star Trek and stuff like that. And I've also done wrestling shows. Like I did a bunch of jokes about wrestling, and I had so much fun. Here's my favorite one, and I'll just
All right.
it's kind of dumb. So Glenn Jacobs was this is when he was campaigning for political office.
Yep.
He wanted to run on an environmental platform, so they said Glenn Jacobs, an alternative to Diesel, because he played the fake Diesel in the old Royal
Right.
Rumble. Okay, it's very, very
I like
specific.
it.
Specific, but I don't know. There's some.
Did you see Tom Segura is in a little bit of trouble in the wrestling world?
Oh no, I didn't see that.
He said that basically made fun of people who are adults who like wrestling.
That's the worst. That's the worst hot take opinion.
I know. In the wrestling community, like I mean, it's one of the most loyal fan bases there are.
Yeah. Who gives a
shit? And they didn't take too kindly to the words that he was calling everybody. It was kind of it was. I mean, I listened to the whole rant. And I was like, what was the point of him saying that it's not real? Or like, okay, I mean, it's 2020. Like, I don't think there's anybody out there that
Right.
thinks that it is.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone thought 2 people got killed last night being thrown off of WWE headquarters.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's one of the dumbest. I mean, whatever. It's like this. It's not even like a controversial opinion. It's like you got to get mad at like an old lady for knitting. It's just something that they like.
I know. Well, yeah.
Leave them alone.
It's weird.
Yeah.
And I am like, what's fun? I obviously I don't watch it anymore, but I am like huge fan from the 80s because I guess like comic books, right? They're like real life comic book characters.
Oh yeah, you tune in every week. It's like a new issue every episode.
Right, and they have to live. Well, at least back then, they had to live their life 24 hours a day as this character.
Yeah,
and you never get to see who the real person was, which is why like I have every autobiography of all the
Oh,
personas, right? Because I just love hearing about like the normal person, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Jerry the King Lawler's is one of my favorites because I'm also a huge Andy Kaufman fan. So
Me too. Me too.
that kind of connection there. I have a Tony Clifton tattoo. I don't know if you can see that.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. But yeah, so I love the autobiographies. I remember just burning through Have a Nice Day when it first came out, and all that. That's good stuff.
Dude, yeah. Andy Kaufman, there'll never be anyone like him.
No, it was insane. Like the wrestling women, he would do that like at comedy clubs, and he would just have women come out of the crowd, you know, and
well, it was probably
and the funny thing, he said that if he lost, he would marry them. Like that was their pride.
Well, it was probably like, well, okay, first off, he was a genius, right? Because he was a great self-promoter. Yeah. Because I truly believe that no one is a better promoter than the wrestling promoters. They can make people come pay money to watch them, right?
Yeah.
And like it was probably like 8 years ago or whatever. I came up with an idea. I'm like, and I threw it out there on like one of the Boston comedian websites, and I'm like, would anyone be interested in like a wrestling meets comedy type of a thing where, you know, you barge in on someone else's set and you start talking shit to them or whatever.
Yeah.
And try to, get it out there. And who knows what's going to happen because, people like Vince McMahon are like the greatest promoters of all time. They're like real life, it's like modern day P.T. Barnum.
Yeah.
I wonder if that would work in like the comedy, to get some heat on somebody.
That would be fantastic. And I feel like, so I don't know if this is exactly how you're describing it, but there were a couple shows that were that happens that there was sort of like that. Like we would do comedy as a character, and I did like a run in and cut promos on someone. I'll send you the link because these last 2 days, and I'll post it as a comment on the Facebook video for anybody who wants to see. But these last few days, I used to compulsively videotape every single set that I did.
Dude, that's awesome.
I have like 400 sets, which is good now, especially because I'm not doing comedy as much. I can steal from myself. I can go back because I've seen a few jokes that I really like that I've completely forgotten or abandoned in 2014. So, but I have something like that where I cut a promo. I came in with a megaphone during someone's set, heckled them, and I
like that. That's pretty. So like old Don Rickles stuff.
Yes. Hey, Baldy, what are you doing? Yeah. I don't know. I would love for something like that to happen, but it's just, I mean, I don't know. Who knows?
Maybe one of the first jokes that I remember. I think this was you that told this joke. Did you tell a Wizard of Oz joke?
Oh yeah, I told a lot of Wizard of Oz.
You told one. I forgot what joke it was, but I just remember.
Was it? Let me ask you this. Okay, yeah. So there's a scene. Wizard of Oz is in black and white, and then Dorothy's house is in a tornado, and then it lands on the Wicked Witch. And Dorothy comes out. She wakes up. She opens the door, and she sees the dead legs of the witch under the house. And I think that what they were trying to say is you can't truly see all the colors of the world until you've killed a person. And then it just snaps into focus and something like that. Yeah.
I remember I remember loving that joke. And I was like, oh man, this guy's really funny.
Yeah.
And you were. I mean, you're pretty you're funny. You're a funny guy. You should definitely got to do you get to tell all of your jokes when you're doing the tours or no? You gotta keep it G-rated, I imagine.
Yeah. I write new jokes. I write jokes about the history of Boston and making fun of random buildings and stuff. I definitely go off on some like weird tangents where people are like, why is he talking about this? But I never subtract history to inject comedy. Like I'll add a little bit of foolishness if we're in a place where there's just buildings and nothing historic to note, just talking the whole time or whatever. But it's fun. It's like I said, just doing a show about all wrestling or doing a show about all comic books. It's like doing a show about all history. So I wrote jokes specifically for these occasions, and I'm always looking for a challenge. If anyone wants to give me a write some jokes about, I'll I'll get working on it.
All right. Well, Matt, I'm going to let you get out of here, buddy. But where can people find your stuff? You have 17 different podcasts out there, right?
Yes, I should have a network. Just Matt Kona is the best thing. MattkOna. It's a website. It hasn't been updated, been a while, but it's got the comics coming up archives there. And I'm on Instagram is probably my favorite. I'm on Twitter a little bit here and there.
Are you on? Are you doing TikTok? Are you on TikTok?
I haven't done TikTok. My wife has done it, and I've been in a video or two of hers. But I don't know what to do with TikTok.
I've made 4 videos, and I can't figure out if it's something I should continue to do.
Are you dancing? Are you dancing in the videos?
I'm copying what everyone else is doing. And I'm thinking, right? And that's what it kind of isn't. It kind of like 100 people doing the same exact scene.
Yeah, that's the thing. They're like, "Oh, this is a daily challenge. Everyone do the thing where you tap your foot, or you like change the shirt, and you're wearing the other person's outfit." I'm like, I don't know.
I make them with my wrestling figures.
Oh, I like that. See, if you could do it, if you have a creative spin on it, that's cool. I just don't know what to do.
I'm not gonna do the same thing as somebody else. You know, everyone coming out of their house doing the "Coming to America," "Hello, my neighbor," or whatever. I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Well, if I download TikTok, I'll give you a follow. That's for sure.
All right. Well, Matt Kona, hey, thanks a lot. I totally appreciate you coming out tonight, man.
Hey, it's a lot of fun, Ed. Thanks very much.
All right. Take care, buddy.
Later.